Welcome to the Digital Business Evolution Podcast, a place that you can now call home. I know you're creating long-lasting impact in this world, and you absolutely deserve the time, location, career, and financial freedom that you desire. I'm here to guide you with proven strategies, tools, and mindset hacks that I've taught to thousands of business owners. You'll also be hearing from exceptional guests sharing stories of their own personal and business evolution. My name is Jessica DeRose, and I'm here to teach you what I'm learning. We are all inherently worthy, regardless of the number of degrees, awards, and accolades that we've collected along the way. Grab a notebook, a coffee, and enjoy the show. Hello. Welcome back to the show. Today we are talking all things navigating negative thoughts and limiting beliefs, which, spoiler alert, we all have them. So if you've ever experienced having a negative thought, which you have, or limiting beliefs, or maybe a block in your mind where you're sort of getting in your own way, first and foremost, you're not alone, you're totally human, and it's totally fine. So don't judge yourself. What I want to talk about today are some of the things that have helped me navigate some of those negative thoughts, because of course they still come up. And something I want to make super clear is that a lot of times I'll have clients and people that I'm mentoring say things to me like, oh, well, you probably don't think that anymore, or it's easier for you, or because you're at a certain place in your business, you don't know how it feels. And I could not express enough that that is so far from the truth. You know, they say, whoever they are, new levels, new devils. And that is exactly what it's been like growing and scaling this business. At every new level, I hit a new threshold. There's sort of, I imagine myself inside of this box, this container. And every time I reach, I'm like crawling up the walls. And every time I reach the ceiling, which is my cap or my capacity, before I can break through that ceiling, I have to navigate. I get to navigate some of those negative thoughts and some of those limiting beliefs. And the breaking through that glass ceiling into that next level is exactly what we're talking about today. So I wrote something down for you that I want to share. According to the National Science Foundation, an average person has 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day, and 80% of those are negative. And the crazy thing about this stat, it continues to talk about how 95% of our thoughts are repetitive thoughts. Okay, let's unpack that for a second. So 80% of the thoughts that you think throughout the day are negative. And 95% of the thoughts that you think today are thoughts that you thought yesterday. So we're on this repetitive loop of negative thoughts, which is not serving us at all. But again, it's part of the human brain. And so while we can filter out things that we watch, we can filter what we consume, who we follow, if we turn the news on, what TV shows, what magazines, we have control over that and we can filter that. We also can control and filter who we surround ourselves with in real life or maybe on social media, which is kind of the same thing as the first thing I said. But what we struggle with having control over is our thoughts. And I've done so much learning and so much researching over the years. I've really dove deep into the learnings of Dr. Wayne Dyer and Esther Hicks, Dr. Joe Dispenza, really understanding how our brain works. And I don't remember who or which doctor it was, but I remember one time hearing on a podcast an interview of a doctor who came on to talk about the ant theory that he had created. And I apologize for not being able to credit him. I know it was a podcast that James Wedmore hosted, so maybe you can find it. The ant theory that he created was ANT, which was an acronym for these automatic negative thoughts. And he created this imagery of these ants sort of marching in our brain with these automatic negative thoughts that we have. And we're on this loop of these thoughts. Now, a negative thought can be anything from a complaint. It could be getting sucked into something like gossip, something super low vibration. It could be something that you're thinking about yourself, like, I'm not good enough. Why me? There's no point. No one's listening. I'm too fat. I'm too ugly. My hair's not thick enough, right? Or it could be a negative thought that you are perceiving that you think other people are thinking about you. So now we're talking about judgment and shame and guilt. I shouldn't have done this thing, right? I shouldn't have said this thing. There are negative thoughts that come up around rejection and what we make that mean about us. So we are meaning-making machines. And when something doesn't make sense to us, our little tiny human brain likes to make it mean something. And we often will attach that meaning to something in our past. So our brain is reaching for things in our past, evidence and beliefs and experiences and memories in our past that we can link to this new thing that's happening. So perfect example, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and many of you listening are entrepreneurs or coaches, startup, side hustle, someone that wants to get into business. And so when we think about rejection, oftentimes we think about, we put a program or a product out, we launch something, we tell people about our membership or come to our masterclass. And when no one joins, we feel rejected. Or maybe you get on a sales call and somebody says, you know what, it's not the best time for me. It's not a good fit. I don't have the money. We feel rejected. And so we go into this spiral. Our brain starts grasping and reaching for memories and evidence in our past life so that we can link together. And if you're watching me on video right now, I've got my fingers linked together, 2 little O's, kind of like the episode of Friends. You're my lobster. He's my lobster. You know what I'm talking about now? Okay. If you're not a Friends lover, I don't know what to tell you. But we link them together with what it meant once before and what does it mean now. So this feeling of rejection all of a sudden turns into this, what do they say, like a mole to a mountain, right? This little tiny mole to a mountain. And so it goes from this, okay, you were rejected, into this big thing that we make it mean about us. And the funny thing with our brain is that our brain and our ego are both just trying to keep us safe. There is a system inside of our body, part of our central nervous system, that is here to keep us safe. And many, 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 many years ago, its job was to let us know when a saber-toothed tiger was coming. And so your body would go into flight or fight response. And chemicals would be released in your body to let you know, oh my gosh, we're in danger. You better run, you better hide, you better freeze, you better play dead. And what happens is, in the human body, the same chemical response is happening. The central nervous system is still triggering that fight or flight response. But now it's based off of little things like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I'm about to hit post and what's going to happen? And you start to feel the same way that we once felt before when we were in, I guess you could say, real danger, life-threatening danger, as opposed to now where it's, I'm about to do a live, I'm scared out of my mind, people are going to judge me, I'm about to launch something, I'm about to put a podcast out, I want to write a blog. And we feel in our body the same way. So here is the permission, the external validation, the reminder to say it's okay to feel that way. No one is telling you not to. Of course you're going to feel that way. It's the human's response, the brain and the body, the central nervous system, to respond that way. So what I love to do is actually recognize, and this is the key thing, it's self-awareness. Having self-awareness is everything. And we're going to talk about that a lot on this podcast if we haven't already. All of my coaching containers and mentorship, I talk about self-awareness a lot because it's when you can become aware of self and what is going on inside of you and outside of you that things start to become neutral. There's a neutrality here. And so when your brain or your body is triggered into this fight or flight response, being able to recognize that as, hey, you know what? Thank you, body and brain, for trying to keep me safe, but you actually could take a seat on the side over here right now. I'm good. I'm just about to do a live. It's not that big a deal. I'm just about to launch something. It's really not a big deal. I'm actually just about to have a difficult conversation. I'm totally safe, but I love you for being here, right? And having gratitude for your ego, for your central nervous system, for your brain, and for the way that your body is wired. Your body is scanning at all times for worst case scenario, or your brain, I should say, is scanning for worst case scenario. Oh my gosh, can we fall off the cliff? Are we going to hit that car? Am I about to get run over? Scanning, scanning, scanning. Do I have enough food to survive? Is there shelter for me tonight? That's what our brain is doing. And so now in the world that we live in, a lot of the things that we feel are being triggered by things that are not actually putting us in harm's way or dangerous in relative to life. So I feel that one of the biggest things that comes up for people is impostor syndrome. And I want to talk about that for a second. And I know this because majority of my clients, this comes up on all of our coaching calls. This is something I talk about with tons of people, friends, on stages, podcasts, you name it. It's the idea of impostor syndrome. And the question is, Jess, how do I overcome it? How do I not feel like an imposter? How do I deal with imposter syndrome? So if you've ever asked yourself that question or found yourself searching for an answer, I'd love you to lean in and just listen here. So everything that I say is my opinion. It's through my lived experience. I'm not a doctor. These are not research papers that I've done or anything like that, but I believe that imposter syndrome is not really a syndrome, because when we hear the word syndrome, it makes us sound like, or we think that it's a disease or a sickness. And imposter syndrome is not a disease or a sickness, but rather it's you feeling like an imposter. And if you were to look up the definition of imposter, it's basically feeling like a fraud or a fake. And the reason, if we go deeper, the reason that you feel like a fraud or a fake is simply because you haven't done it before, right? So when you've done something even just once, you don't necessarily feel like an imposter. You might feel like a beginner or a newbie. You might not feel like an expert. You feel like an amateur, but you don't feel like an imposter. You're like, I've driven here before. I kind of recognize this. I've tried this thing before. I've tasted olives before. You're not an imposter. You're just kind of new at it. And so what I love to do is help reframe, or help remind you to reframe that it's not imposter syndrome, but rather you're just feeling like a beginner. So if we can even start to use that language in our own life, instead of I feel like an imposter to I feel like a beginner, to me, that's way more empowering. Because when you're at the beginning of something, well, then we all know there's only room for growth. And if you're the beginner or you're at the beginning, there's sort of a flexibility of there's no expectation that you quote unquote should be good or refined. You shouldn't have to be an expert when you're a beginning or a beginner. So there's almost this weight that gets lifted off to say, you know what? I'm just new at this. This is just new for me. Like me with podcasts. This is like my 13th episode. I'm a beginner. I don't feel like an imposter, but I definitely don't feel like a podcast expert. But as I go through it and as I learn, I'm learning more and more. And the more action that I take, the more confidence that I feel. Something that we teach is the ABC method. Action breeds confidence. So if you're not feeling confident, if you're not feeling like a seasoned veteran, well, just put in more reps, put in more action. The more times you do something or try something, there's clarity in the contrast of learning what works and what doesn't work. How does it feel? How does it not feel? And so this idea of imposter syndrome, it's not going to go away. And do not judge yourself when you feel it or when you hear it, but rather, can you reframe it in your own head? It's not that I'm an imposter, but rather I'm a beginner. Hey, I'm popping in real quick to let you know about a really incredible opportunity and offer, an invitation that the team and I are just putting out to the world. So I want to let you know about it while you're listening. It is Beyond Six Figures Mentorship, which is our newest container, but really it's not a new container at all. It's a reimagined, reinvented container that we just haven't held in a really long time. So Beyond Six Figures is a 6-month mentorship container, which is a really multifaceted approach to scaling your business, leadership, and income. I want you to think of it as 4 different parts. So part number 1 is going to be, of course, coaching and mentoring from me, as well as other industry experts. Part number 2 is all of the trainings and the portal or the course content that you're going to dive into whenever you want, wherever you want, and wherever you may be in your business. So I'm not walking you through this like a course that's step by step, but rather it's an entire course that you can dive into, whether you want to look at media and getting press and PR, you want to figure out how to hire your first person, you want to look at a new launch process, or maybe you want to launch your own podcast. All of this higher level content lives inside of a course that, of course, you get lifetime access to, but it's there for you to dive into whenever you need or want. Part number 3 is going to be the community that comes along with being in a high level container. And that community is people that you can collaborate with, of course, celebrate with, have those awkward conversations that not everybody else fully understands in your life. And let's face it, people to lean on and cry with, because scaling a business can feel really hard and heavy. And then the 4th part, which I am most excited about, oh my goodness, we have not done this since February or March of 2020, but it is an in-person mastermind retreat, which the idea of us all sitting around together inside of a cozy Airbnb with expansive views where we're going to get to learn from industry experts, the entire team at Digital Business Evolution, myself and each other, while eating yummy snacks and you know how it goes. I don't want to give away all the details, but the fact that we are bringing this back is so exciting. I've hosted dozens and dozens of retreats and events over the years, and I am literally jumping out of my skin with the idea that in August, we are going to be sitting together powwowing. I just cannot wait. So who is Beyond Six Figures for? Where can you find more information. Beyond Six Figures is for the coach or the entrepreneur who's already made money. Maybe you've even scaled kind of fast, so fast that the business is actually controlling you and you're kind of drowning in your work, working in the business all the time and never on the business. You definitely have clients and revenue, but you're looking to scale. Maybe you've built everything yourself completely organically or not, like I did, completely organically, and you know that it's actually beyond time to start outsourcing and delegating. But the fact of the matter is, you don't have time to go looking for someone to hire, and you definitely don't have time to onboard or train somebody. And it's for the person who's hitting that consistent 10, 20, 30K month, maybe even 40K month. Maybe you're doing launch style stuff where you're hitting 50K launches, maybe 70K launches, maybe even consistent 30K launches, but you're ready to get to the next level. You've plateaued a bit. And so you really want to jump into the 50 to 100K month range, and you really want to look at hitting six-figure launches. So the coolest thing is not only are you going to be learning from me and other industry experts, as I alluded to, but we are going to help you collapse time and navigate challenges with a zoomed out view of an unbiased perspective of your business. And when I say we, I mean the entire team at Digital Business Evolution. We're bringing in the big guns, and you're getting direct access to the leadership team at DBE. All things leadership, psychology, hiring, org chart, advanced launch systems, EPL, CPL, different types of marketing, bringing in affiliate programs, automations, restructuring your business, branding, reworking your messaging, the list goes on. So here's the deal. If you're interested in learning more, remember you are a seasoned entrepreneur or coach at this point. You're not a total newbie. You can head to the link in my show notes, all about Beyond Six Figures mentorship, or best thing to do is just text me the word mentorship to 973-358-7836. Again, text me mentorship 973-358-7836, and we can start the conversation to see if you're a good fit. Beyond Six Figures mentorship kicks off in June, and I would hate for you to miss the opportunity of a lifetime. Another thing that comes up a lot of times is in the concept or capacity of these negative thoughts is the feelings of, I can't, I'm not good enough, why me, nobody's listening, right? And all of these self-limiting beliefs or this self-doubt comes up. And so one thing that I love to teach here is how can we, and this is what I practice, how can I borrow the evidence from other people that in fact I can do it? Because again, the feeling that I can't is simply because I haven't, or I've tried and it quote unquote hasn't worked, which is just an expectation that I've created. So maybe my expectations need a checking. But if I feel like I can't, or I'm not good enough, why me? No one's listening. There's no point. Can I look around? Can I scan the proverbial room or social media or the internet or whatever that might be? And can I find someone who's doing the thing that I want to do? Can I find evidence out there that someone's already done it? Maybe even someone with less than what I have in terms of resources or skill or ability. That'll really catapult your belief. So you don't have to have done it. Action breeds confidence. But if you haven't done it yet, if you haven't taken action yet, can you look around and find someone who has? And simply borrow the belief that if they can, then I know I can too. When we're doing something new, when we're doing something unknown, it's super common to feel that triggered response of, I can't, I'm not good enough. No one's going to read my blog. No one's going to show up to my masterclass. I can't possibly start a podcast. I don't have enough followers. Who am I? And so again, the feeling that you're having is real, but the self-awareness is the key. So how quickly can you come back from that? I call this the comeback rate. How fast can you sort of get back on the horse? How quickly can you recognize when one of these thoughts is crawling through your brain? And it's not a matter of can you squash it? And it's not a matter of can you stop it from ever coming in again, but rather recognizing it's always going to crawl through your brain. But how fast can you recognize when it's crawling and then maybe redirect it into a different area? So self-awareness, like I said, is key. Now, another thing that I love to do is when we have all these negative thoughts and this chatter in our brain, which is just constantly on a loop, we said about 80% of the time, which is most of our thoughts, can I look at it through a lens of it's not actually even me, it's not my ego, it's not my brain, but rather a third party. So we all know, we've all said before that we would never talk to other people the way that we talk to ourselves, which is a podcast for a different day. But the idea here is Can you take the thought that's coming through your brain and imagine that it came in from a third party? So somebody that you met at an event, an old friend, a family member, someone you don't even know, a stranger, a troll online. Can you make them the person who said the thought to you? And when you do that, you sort of detach from the thought itself. You detach from the meaning that you're giving the thought. And instead, imagine you're standing in a grocery store line and someone behind you says this thought to you. How would you actually feel then? You might be triggered. You might be annoyed. You might actually laugh it off because you're like, this person doesn't know me. That's ridiculous. Why would they say that? So what I challenge you to do is take it from the lens of a third party, the perspective of a third party, and say to yourself, well, that's interesting. It's kind of weird, but why would they say that to me? Where's that coming from them? What are they going through for them to say something like that to me? And how can I keep it neutral? I'm just going to let it bounce off of me. Or we're mirrors for one another. So is there something that I could look at internally that would maybe be the reason that they said something? Maybe I triggered something in them. So looking at the thought coming in from a third party gives you the distance and neutrality to really sort of observe the thought from a 30,000 foot view rather than inside of you. Now, another thing that I love to do when I'm having these negative thoughts, these self-doubts, limiting beliefs, is to ask myself these two questions. Number one, is it true? Is the thought that I'm thinking actually true? Am I really not good enough? Am I really not worthy? Am I actually not capable of doing the thing I want to do? Is there really no point? Typically, the answer is no. It's sometimes laughable. What? Of course I can. But I'm not thinking that in the moment. So then I go and ask myself a second question, which is almost a repeat of the first, but it goes a little bit deeper. Question one, is it true? Question two, is it absolutely true? Meaning in every single moment, in every single way, in every single circumstance, it is true. Is it absolutely true? And when you ask yourself that question, in my experience, 9.9 times out of 10, it is not absolutely true. Not even close to absolutely true. Maybe, you know what? I think I could even say 10 times out of 10. So is it true? Is it absolutely true? And when you find that the answer is no, again, it's kind of laughable, then that is a filter that reveals the fact that when it's not absolutely true, it's not always true, then is it ever true? And so again, asking yourself these questions, seeing it from a third-party lens, it creates distance. And then it becomes a choice if you choose to accept the thought or not. You don't have to accept the thought just because it was an ant crawling through your head. But awareness is the hardest part. So I can tell you to stop thinking negative thoughts, but that's never going to change, nor is that the quote unquote solution. That's not the way to fix it. You're never going to fix it. So rather than trying to fix it or control it, how can you manage it? Now, going back to the top and just repeating one thing that I had said earlier, I want to dive a little bit deeper. We are meaning-making machines. And so earlier I was talking about rejection, and I talk about this all the time in my coaching programs. We are not afraid of rejection. While we think we are, we're not afraid of rejection. We've all been rejected. Heck, when you were probably just a few days old, you maybe were crying for milk and you were rejected, or you were crying for a nap and your parent or whoever was taking care of you actually gave you milk. And so you didn't get the thing that you needed. You were rejected from the thing that you wanted. Throughout our life, we've been rejected from friends. We've been left out. We've been not invited to things. We didn't make sports teams. We didn't get honor roll. We didn't get the 100% on our test. We've been rejected by significant others. So we've all been rejected probably thousands and thousands of times. And we've survived. So going back to the survival of the fittest, the fight or flight, your body and your central nervous system and your brain trying to keep you safe, we know deep down that you can, in fact, be rejected and still survive, which means you still are safe. And so it's not rejection that we're scared of, but we're scared of what we've made that mean about us. So when we were just a few days old, this is crazy. This goes into like trauma, little t and big T. When you were just a few days old and you cried for something and you didn't get the thing that you needed, what did you make that mean about you? Maybe you made it mean at a very young subconscious age that your voice wasn't heard. And so because it wasn't heard, you were not seen. And because you weren't seen, you were actually not loved. And because you weren't loved, you're actually not worthy. Crazy. I share a story oftentimes. I was in elementary school, and I used to make art all the time. My mom was an artist. My brother's artistic. I'm artistic. And my parents would never hang my artwork on the refrigerator. And at a very young age, I made that mean something about me that I wasn't able to actually see or unpack until about 2 years ago. I think I was 36 or 37 when I recognized this pattern. So throughout my life, I started to push my creativity and push my artwork down. And I stopped doing it. I stopped sharing it. I stopped showing it because I felt that it wasn't good enough. And when I started doing some of this work and journaling and going through exercises, I started to recognize this pattern from a very young age of, looking back, it makes sense. When I was in elementary school, when I was 5 in kindergarten and 7 and 8, my parents didn't hang my artwork up on the refrigerator, but all of my classmates, all of their parents hung their artwork up. So at a very young age, I made that mean that my artwork wasn't good enough, which meant that my parents weren't impressed. They didn't think I was good enough, which meant that they didn't love me maybe. And then I wasn't worthy. My artwork wasn't worthy, and there was no point. I had no value to add. When the reality of it was, which I learned at a much older age, number one, my mom just didn't like messy refrigerators. And number two, our refrigerator was not magnetic. Period. End of story. So she couldn't, unless she used tape, she couldn't hang stuff on the refrigerator. And that just wasn't her vibe. That was not her aesthetic. It had nothing to do with how proud they were or how good I was or how worthy I was or how much they loved me. But I carried that story deep down, ingrained in my central nervous system and my ego, that when I put artwork out there and it might be rejected, then that rejection actually means I'm just not good enough. And we carry that through because remember, we make links, we chain things together. So now I do a sales call, somebody says, no, thank you, not for me. And now I've made that rejection mean I am not good enough. Coming from layers of my offer wasn't good enough, my messaging wasn't good enough, the program wasn't good enough, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough followers, and it goes deep down inside. So when you're facing negative thoughts, which you are, about 80% of the day, 80% of the time, 95% of your thoughts are on repeat, I'd love you to look from a couple different lenses. Number one, imposter syndrome. You're not sick. You're just a beginner. That's empowering. Take it and run. Number two, can you borrow the evidence from other people that it is in fact possible and detach from how long it's going to take and when it's going to be done and how it's going to get done? Number three, can you go from a third-party lens of, that's interesting. If someone else said that to me, then how would I feel? How would I react? And be detached. And then number four, asking yourself these two questions of, is it true? And is it absolutely true? Because oftentimes you'll find that the answer is no. So how can you navigate negative thoughts? How can you manage and handle self-doubt and limiting belief? Well, it's managing it. Self-awareness is key. How quickly can you have an awareness of the ants, the automatic negative thoughts that are crawling through your brain, and how fast can you just recognize that they're there? That's what takes practice. That's what takes practice. So I would love to continue this conversation. I would love for you, if you haven't already, to join our text community where I chit chat with you basically all day, every day. And it is me. So I would love you to text me at 973-358-7836 and just tell me some of your biggest takeaways from this episode. Because again, we all have negative thoughts. We all have limiting beliefs. We all have self-doubt that creeps in. And it's just our body and our brain's way of trying to keep us safe. So find gratitude in that safety. Find gratitude that your systems are wiring and firing on all cylinders at all times. Text me 973-358-7836. And as always, if you love this episode, please share it out with the world. Take a screenshot, tag me at I am Jessica DeRose so I can share you and we can get these messages into the hands and ears of more people out there. As always, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.